Good evening, everyone. It's 8 p.m. I'm pleased to have on board today a special guest, somebody that I've known personally for 14 years, actually, almost to the day. I'm going to bring him in right now. It's Jamie Jubon. Jamie, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, pleased to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no worries, Jamie. I hope I don't expose your lack of knowledge regarding tennis too much.
I, I was more fearful it might be the other way around actually, but
You don't want to ruin my career just as it's beginning.
I'll hold back a bit. You just told me to hold back just before, so
Yeah, I don't want you to humiliate me and make me look bad. I'm supposed to be the one, the host. I've just done a show on qualifiers and some of the lower ranked players, and I just said, "Look, mate," I said it to Damien, who was great. I said, "You've got to fill in all the gaps," and he did. But hopefully, you won't find too many chinks in my armor, Jamie.
yeah. Well, if to be honest, as long as if we're not talking too much about the qualifying, then I think yeah, it should be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're basically here, and I'll let the audience know. And if you've read the description, of course, and some of the tweets I've been tweeting out, you'll know that we're here to talk about the four slams, but obviously with the biggest eye and the biggest focus on New York. Jamie and I are very fortunate in that we've been to all four slams at one point or another, and we're going to compare them. But we're going to compare them basically to New York. So the focus of this show is very much the U.S. Open from a fan's eye point of view. But of course, to make that comparison, we obviously have to reference the other slams. We've got a couple of people now on board. That's great. Get your comments in the live chat. If you've been to any or all four of the slams, let me know what you favored, which one was your favorite and why, and if there's any particular ones that you don't particularly like for whatever reason. And we will mention our favorite. Very good. Oh, Michael, that's great. So Michael's been to all four as well. Michael, I'd love to hear what you've got to say about those four. Well, that's great. Well, let's start with Australia because he says that's his favorite. You and I have both been to Australia. I went in 2006. Jamie, when did you go?
I went in 2018. So yeah, about 4.5 years ago now. Yeah, I saw Nadal play against Cilic in a quarter final. It was a really good game, but then Nadal unfortunately got injured. I think maybe in the fourth set, and then had to pull out in the fifth. So I saw that, and I also saw Caroline Wozniacki as well, and I think it was the year that she won it.
Okay.
So yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting point, actually, because again, from the fans' perspective, sometimes you go and see these matches and somebody gets injured. I mean, how did the crowd take it that day in Australia? How did you take it, and how did everyone feel about Nadal pulling out injured, albeit in the fourth set?
Yeah, I guess I just remember sort of being. I guess when you're watching at home and a player kind of has to pull out and withdraw, it's obviously kind of disappointing. But when you're there and when you're in the stadium and a player has to kind of withdraw because of injury, then I think it's almost like that disappointment is kind of magnified. You're because you're so into the match, and as you know, I'm a big Nadal fan as well. So it was kind of
As well, Jamie. Is there anyone else here who's a Nadal fan?
I'm not sure, is that true?
Don't worry, the viewers here will certainly know about my allegiances. But yeah, so just go on, continue about that sort of feeling when a player pulls out.
Yeah, it's just kind of I think it's obviously kind of really frustrating and disappointing from a sort of spectator point of view. But I think as well when you're in the stadium and at the match, you can almost maybe feel the emotion of the player more as well. So I remember being kind of really upset and disappointed for Nadal as well. Yeah, and it was such a good match. I mean, Cilic, to be honest, even if Nadal would have stayed fit, I think Cilic would have had a good chance of winning because he was playing so well. So yeah, it was disappointing because it was such a great spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, at least you got to see, 4 sets of competitive action. Of course, you'd have people going to Wimbledon this year for the semi-finals, and I know that Wimbledon either gave some compensation or they put some doubles matches on. I think they did a bit of both, actually, because obviously there was only one men's semi-final this year, and that, of course, happened Nadal pulls out before the match even gets underway. Let's just have a quick look. There's another comment here from Mile. In 2010 in Australia, Nadal pulled out against Murray. Actually, I don't remember that one. Do you have any memories of that happening?
Oh, okay. I don't actually know. Was that during the match? Was it? I can't remember
Probably
that.
beforehand, I would have thought in 2010. I don't know when they were due to play each other, but maybe Michael, who's a fountain of tennis knowledge in the chat, and he actually mentioned as well regarding Australia about how knowledgeable the crowd are. I do think that there are differences, if you like, between tournaments. I mean, as I said, we've been to all four of the majors. I said there's a quarterfinals he pulled out of in 2010, and I guess
Oh,
knowledge is something you do get. I mean, actually, I think probably away from the slams is when you find the biggest difference. If you go to a smaller tournament, then the fans there are much more into their tennis and really keen, and they know, you can tune into some spaces. I was just on a spaces just a little while ago, just listening in, and you can hear everybody, and they're having certain opinions on the world number 57 against the world number 110 that's playing in the first round or whatever. And you can tell that these are the kind of guys that are also going to the smaller tournaments. Once you get to the majors, I find there's, in my opinion, I know Michael highlighted a slightly different thing with Australia.
hmm.
I think generally, maybe Australia's maybe wins the knowledge, if you like, amongst the four majors, and maybe Wimbledon comes last in that one. We'll come to Wimbledon and the French as well in a second, but I was in Australia, in Melbourne in 2006. And I went to this is something that can happen as well when you're a fan. You buy tickets, you get your daytime tickets, which again will vary from tournament to tournament. And I know Wimbledon are a bit more generous with that, in that I think that that's a great thing at Wimbledon, that say you have the men's semifinals or the women's semifinals, you get to see both of them. Whereas in
Hmm.
France, of course, they separate them, which I think sucks a bit from a fan's perspective. But coming back to Australia, so I had a daytime ticket, and I think you were at the quarterfinals. I was at the fourth round, I think, in 2006. And as it turned out, I got the daytime ticket a few days before, and it sucked. I think I got to see Davydenko, maybe, and my memory's sketchy. But whoever's on in the day sucked. The nighttime was Federer against Tommy Haas, and Sammy Sosa, I think it was, against, who was just at the beginning of her career, home favorite, against Martina Hingis. And
Oh,
this
wow.
was, yeah, exactly. But what we did, my friend Ronan and I, a guy from France who I was there with, we both lived in Australia at the time. We actually then queued up like early evening, if you like, 6, 7 o'clock, I think, queued up and managed to get tickets again for the evening, which was what it was all about. And I then had my first experience of a major, if you like, and certainly in the evening, and seeing some of these rock and roll matches. And I had my first moment, not my last, of where I'd had a few drinks and I fell asleep, Jamie. Something you will have been familiar with, because you and I have also been to, I think, all the majors together. Do you want to elaborate on some of my sleeping habits at majors?
um, yeah, I mean, I can certainly say that is not. I can vouch for witnessing that in the flesh. Um, and yeah, it's. I guess, yeah, I think it happened. It definitely. I remember it very clearly happening in New York.
Yeah,
And I don't,
2016.
yeah, I don't know if you would agree, John. But I'm not sure whether it's a reflection of the match that you're watching, or maybe a reflection of something else.
I think it's more about how many drinks I've had, and depending on what time the flight was. And I find, actually, funny enough, I went back to New York in 2019, and one of the tricky things with New York, we're coming from London, and I find that with the time difference. Of course, Australia is much more exaggerated, but in a way, I don't know. I was living in Australia, so perhaps that made it a completely different situation. Wimbledon, Roland Garros, very different, of course, basically same time zone or 1 hour difference compared to the UK with Paris. But with New York, certainly in 2019, I noticed this especially. You arrive, say you have a direct flight, you take off sort of nice time, you take off sort of mid morning, late morning, as I will be doing myself again in 10 days. You land at say lunchtime as well, because the time difference and the time of the flight means you probably only lose a couple of hours, so to speak, if I'm right. You sort of take off 11 a.m. and you land at 1 p.m., which on the face of it seems great, right?
Mm.
And but then if you're going to the tennis that day, or even whatever your plans are, I didn't go immediately in 2019, for example, but by 10, 11 p.m., you're really knackered. Because, by the way, of course, that's 3 or 4 in the morning, wherever you're flying from, if you're flying from Europe. And so, of course, 10 or 11. And what I found in 2019, and it was probably the same in 2016, late nights just didn't happen. I was there for 5 days, and I only went to the tennis one day in 2019, the final. US Open, as something you've not done yet, Jamie. But we will come to some elements where you certainly have the upper hand, and we'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, I found it a real struggle, if you like. Fortunately, the final starts at 4 p.m. But you wouldn't know that, Jamie, because you've never been. But in the US Open, so actually that one's not too bad. But I remember that day in New York, we were there 2016. Of course, by midnight, I was struggling in terms of staying awake. But I think your father was there too, and he had the same issue, right?
I think he had the same issue, and I'm not sure whether he. We'd already been there about 5 days, so I'm not sure whether he could have the sort of same excuse. But yeah, the time that the 2016 time that we're referring to as well, I think, and actually the same thing seems to happen, or certainly used to happen in Australia as well. When I was there, they kind of they seem to sort of start so late, don't they? And then they used to have kind of where they would always seem to have like a women's match that would come on second, and it would be so late, and then the crowd would sort of disperse, and there wasn't many people in the stadium, and that would probably add to the whole kind of sort of sleepy feel, maybe.
Yeah.
I know they are sort of trying to adjust that a bit.
I mean, I know you said your dad had already been there 4 or 5 days, but to be honest with you, I mean, even on day 4, day 5, you're still kind of in that sleep pattern. And actually, I was waking up personally in 2019. I was waking up earlier than I wanted to, but couldn't get back to sleep because, as I say, 10, 11 o'clock was the end of the day or on day one, and I couldn't get out of that habit. And perhaps your father felt the same in 2016, but there's a little asterisk that we're forgetting here, and that is the drinks consumption. By the way, talking of which, you need to show us your cup that you've got on for starters. Let's see the cup you've got. Yeah, nice one.
There
2016. I've already highlighted mine, although mine is actually a lot worse for wear. It's been through the dishwasher, I think, too many times.
You can still see the names there. Yeah, the previous
good
winners.
Condition. Yeah, good condition. Mine is no longer in good enough condition to consume from, but it does have a nice place on the shelf, and you can just about make out the names. But I will add that my cup has traveled all over the world because I think in 2016 I was between moving from I was living in Spain and just moving to Denmark, and I actually took a lot of things with me, and so that cup then got picked up in New York and then taken to Denmark, and I've moved around the world a few times since then. And I love my cups. I think whatever sport they are or whatever association they are, I like to keep my cups and that one in particular. Also, Jamie, I think you need to show us the T-shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, sure.
You might have to stand up.
You see it?
There you go. You got that in? Did you get that in? Where did you get that in Paris? Right?
I got it in. I got it in Melbourne.
Okay.
And actually, just sort of looking at it, you might just. It sort of just looks like 4 flags, but you can see here that there you go. There's the proof.
2018, yeah, exactly.
Australian Open 2018, yeah.
I haven't. I was wearing my US Open T-shirt yesterday that I bought, but so all I've got today is a T-shirt with the New York background on it. Actually, it just happens to be a sports T-shirt that shows the skyline. And actually, I think we're gonna come to that in a minute. Let's talk about one or two of the other slams that we haven't mentioned so much. Let's talk Paris. So you and I went to Paris in 2019, I think. We also went to Wimbledon just a few weeks later, so that was a really good summer for you and I. And you and I were also both in Paris again this year. And actually, let's talk this year. And again, we're talking about it from the fans' point of view. You and I kind of messed up this year, didn't we, with buying our tickets?
Yeah, I think so. There was, it's always kind of with the French Open tickets. It's always
different to Wimbledon.
Different to Wimbledon, yeah. You're sort of spending a lot of time.
Well, actually, Wimbledon changed this year.
Yeah,
but anyway,
changed, isn't it?
How did we mess up, Jamie?
Yeah, we messed up by kind of choosing the sort of wrong quarterfinal, I guess, didn't we?
But we don't know, do we? We're buying the tickets like 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks in advance, whatever that happens to be. And of course, there's so many different ways. Michael, they're asking us how we got our tickets. Well, we just got them through the website. You've got to kind of be on board, and you've got to look for clues. And when it says like 9 a.m. and then maybe even I think I saw somebody tweeting saying that there was going to be another round. So you just got to really follow the right people, I guess. But yeah, we messed up because we buy these tickets so far in advance. And with the French Open, although actually Wimbledon has now copied this style this year, I think the first time. But Wimbledon used to know that from the Tuesday of the second week onwards, you used to know what rounds were happening. So Wimbledon used to be Tuesday would be, I think, women's quarterfinals. Wednesday would be men's quarterfinals. Thursday would be women's semifinals. Friday, men's semifinals. Whereas the French Open and now Wimbledon have also changed. So we bought our tickets several weeks before. Oh, great. Quarterfinals, Wednesday. Wonderful. We were thinking Wednesday day session would be 2 men's quarterfinals and Wednesday night session 2 quarterfinals, which you and I we should have known better, given that we've had, 5-10 years of experience of going to these majors. But sadly, that meant who did we see this year in the French Open? Can you remember?
Yeah, we saw Casper Ruud against Holger Rune, didn't we? Which was it was a good game, but for I guess a Grand Slam quarter final, we wouldn't necessarily have expected to see that. I think we both arrive on the day Nadal played Djokovic the night before?
No, you arrived the night before. I got the train the next morning. I couldn't even really I had to work on the Tuesday night. I was doing a night shift for my main job, and I would love to have gone there, even just to have been there, but I had to do a night shift. I was actually going to consider if it was in the daytime, that one, to go to Paris and back. I'm within a few hours, so I can do it by train. But so of course we buy these tickets, we get it wrong, and you don't know weeks in advance. It's really the draw. That's the thing is with Paris and London as well, though, is both the chase for tickets is much more intense. New York, and I believe Melbourne is still the same, is that you can wait. I would love to have had a press pass this year in New York. I didn't get it, unfortunately, but as the channel grows, hopefully that will come to fruition in future years. But with obviously being a newbie, in New York, I'm keeping my powder dry because you can. In Paris and London, you've got to sort of maybe think about it a bit more and be a bit lucky. I mean, what messes up in Paris, which we have no idea about, is Nadal obviously pulls out or he gets injured in Rome, so he loses Shapovalov. His seeding goes down to 5. Tsitsipas, I think, overtakes him because Tsitsipas gets to the final in Rome. And those little tiny things, and then the draw happens on the Thursday before the tournament, and then suddenly you're looking at the 4 favorites all falling in a similar part of the draw with Zverev, Nadal, Djokovic, and Alcaraz, all basically going to be playing on the Tuesday. And with Tsitsipas going out early, we're left with Cilic against forget who he played. I think he played Rublev maybe, and Casper Ruud was playing.
Did he beat Medvedev, I think?
Yeah, he did in the round before. So you just don't know. But what we should have done is we should have thought about the previous year, because I did remember looking back for the previous year, Tsitsipas playing Medvedev in the quarterfinal. I remember that was on the Tuesday. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, listen, we had that. But regarding Paris as a whole, and how do you feel? Do you get more excited about going to the French Open or Wimbledon? Which one of those two do you have a better feeling about?
It's really hard to say. I think I get more excited about going to the French Open because I think it's obviously something different. I've been to Wimbledon more because it's more local. So I prefer going to the French Open, I would say. I get more excited. But out of the kind of 3 overseas slams, I would say the French is probably my least exciting, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, our nationality definitely plays a role in this, and where we're from and where we grew up, and for many people you might think that means that we love Wimbledon more. I actually think because we like to get on a plane and go somewhere exciting, it probably means a bit less, certainly for me anyway. But Jamie, you've been to some pretty big matches. Obviously none compared to the 2018 French Open final between Nadal and Dominic Thiem. We all know that was the greatest match of all time that I was there for. Just happened to be there for that unbelievable straight sets victory for the Mallorcan. But you were also at a couple of pretty big ones at Wimbledon on the men's side anyway. 07 final were you at?
Yeah, 07 final and 08 final.
08, yeah, but that was a pretty boring affair, the 08 final. In fact, I don't think even anyone can remember the 2008 men's Wimbledon final.
No, people will have to rack their memories of it.
But seriously, tell us about that.
It was so I think 07 was the first year that Ticketmaster started doing Wimbledon tickets. so kind of made it a bit more accessible for people who weren't members or part of tennis clubs. So I managed to go. I went with my granddad in 2007, and
Nice.
I went on the second day, I think, and we saw. I mean, the schedule on Centre Court. It was the year when they were sort of doing the roof, so it was the open year.
Yeah.
Which was quite strange, but we had a great schedule. We saw a really young Nadal, a really young Djokovic, and we saw Tim Henman's final victory at Wimbledon, I think, against Carlos Moya, which was great. But then we also managed to get tickets for the final in 2007, which was also a classic. I mean, it's obviously spoken about less than the 2008 final, but again, that was also an amazing final. And to be honest, Nadal should have won that final, and it was just Federer's serve that sort of got him out of trouble in the fifth set, I think. Looking back, 5 sets again, yeah. And then 2008, I mean, yeah, that was I went with my dad to that one, and that was incredible. The last year without the retractable roof, so that's why it finished so late and so dark.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how did you get tickets for that 2008 final, by the way?
That was the same through Ticketmaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back then they were sort of on the Ticketmaster website. They were only about. They were no more than it was between 90 and 100, and that was for the final.
They're double that now at least.
Yeah, at least. I think 90 to 100, you're looking at sort of a second or third round probably now.
Yeah, I think I have noticed at all of the majors, or particularly the 3, New York, London, and Paris. It's a long time since I was in Australia, but the prices have gone up a lot. I would say that New York is more affordable. I was just the other day looking at a quarterfinal ticket for Arthur Ashe, and I think it was $63. I say quarterfinal, that would be for the Tuesday night session in New York. I probably shouldn't shout this too loud in case everyone goes and buys them all up and stuff. But the other thing with New York as well, it's actually just in general, certainly compared to the 2 European ones, a lot easier to get tickets, albeit that once you do get to the semi-finals and the finals, of course, the prices do rocket up. But I think $63, no matter where you're sitting on Arthur Ashe, I think it's an amazing price compared to the other majors.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be for the quarterfinals. And I'm hoping to be at the night session on the Tuesday, which would, be some quarterfinal action in 10 days from now. So yeah, Wimbledon 2008. You and I went back or you and I went. My first Wimbledon, by the way, was 2003 as a fan. Just trying to think, 2003. Yes, exactly. So I always, for some reason, 01, 02, and 03, I often get those years muddled up. Partly because I think Federer's breakthrough victory was in 01 against Sampras, but he didn't actually win the tournament until 03. So I often that sort of messes me about. And 02, Leighton Hewitt won it. And funny enough, in this period, you don't, being from the UK as well, you like tennis, but for 50 weeks of the year, it doesn't exist. And then for 2 weeks of the year, it does.
That's why they're the least knowledgeable crowd.
Yeah, right, exactly. And Michael, they're just saying that Australia is really expensive these days. But yeah, and so I went in 03 for the first day, and I just thought, well, Hewitt's easily going to win this match against a young guy called Karlovic, who's about 6'6" or whatever he is, 2 meters 10 or what it is, and Hewitt, I think, won the first set if I remember rightly, and I thought, oh well, that's that done, and actually Karlovic won in 4. To actually be, I think that was the first time the reigning men's champion Lisa had gone out in the first round in about 35 years. So that was a cool experience for my first Wimbledon. And then I was back there in 2016, I think it was. I was at the Djokovic delayed match because I think it got rained off the previous day because it wasn't on centre court. I think it was on court 1. And so I was watching that, and he went out. That was a cool thing. And I actually met you for drinks that evening, I remember. But anyway, 2019, you and I get to go to to Wimbledon. We went twice, didn't we? We had a bit of on the Friday of the first week, we did some of the outdoor courts, and that was fun, wasn't it? Or the outside courts? Yeah,
that was really fun, wasn't it? We saw Kyrgios played it in the mixed doubles.
In the mixed doubles,
which was fun, and that was also the year that Coco Gauff had her breakthrough. He was watching it on the
big screen. She beat Venus Williams, didn't she? Yeah, and I think it was in that Kyrgios mixed doubles match, by the way, that somebody opened a bottle of champagne and the cork landed on the court.
I think so. Yeah. I'm surprised that Kyrgios didn't make more of it then than maybe
Yeah,
would have.
right. Because that's actually something I think quite cool about Wimbledon. Let me know in the live chat how this works at some of the other majors. I know at Wimbledon you can take drinks in, which is great because the price of drinks inside is insane. Um, I can't remember in Paris. Oh, in Paris you can't. In Paris you're not supposed to anyway. For sure, not even a small amount. Whereas actually at Wimbledon you can. I think they do restrict it, but it's a generous restriction, like something like a bottle of wine and 2 beers or something per person, which is normally enough for the average human being. I'm not sure how it works in Melbourne and New York, and I'd love to know in the live chat, are you allowed to take, particularly New York, because it's coming up beginning tomorrow, of course, and you can catch a lot of the action from the early part of the day's play. The day's play tomorrow gets underway 11 a.m. local time, 4 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. in Germany as I live. So, but anyway, whenever the play starts, you can tune in to Talking Tennis tomorrow, and I'll be taking you through some of the early action at least. Okay, so Michael is saying you can't take drinks into New York. So that kind of makes sense given how New York is a bit stricter, I think, in terms of public drinking in general. But yeah, so you and I went in 2019. We had a great time, but then we spontaneously decided to go back a week later, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and we managed to get semi-final tickets, and we saw Nadal against Federer.
Yeah, we did.
Which
And Djokovic, Bautista are good. Don't forget.
yeah, don't forget that. I think I kind of had to talk you through the Nadal Federer game, didn't I? 'Cause that was the first time you'd witnessed one.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
you'd just seen them a couple of weeks before. You saw them at the French Open as well.
yeah. I've been lucky with that matchup. I think I've seen it about four. I've seen it 4 times,
Nice.
which
And
is
always at majors. And I don't know how many times they've played at a major. I mean, they've never played in New York, but I would
no,
imagine, I would guess off the top of my head, they've probably played about 15 times at majors altogether. And you've seen about a third of them.
yeah, sure, yeah. Which sort of thinking about it, kind of feel quite privileged, really. And I think it's 2 wins apiece, yeah,
2 wins
out of
apiece at
those
the
four.
matches you've seen, yeah. Of course, I had quite a few cans of Fosters that day. By the time I think the match was finishing, those Fosters were fairly warm. But that's how it is. Anyway, we're here also to talk about, New York in particular from the fans' perspective, because, I mean, I'm going to say it now, and we've kind of touched on it anyway, Jamie. New York is my favorite major to visit as a fan. Oh, is that more or less the case for you as well?
I would say so, yeah. I've only been the once, and it was to a night session, but I would say so.
Why is that for you?
I think it's got such a unique feel, really. Compared, I mean, they all do, but it's kind of got it feels more like say a huge event. I think when you're there,
Yeah,
I think the size of sort of Arthur Ashe probably plays a big part because it is
yeah,
the main
it's the
stadium's like
biggest.
absolutely spectacular, isn't it? I think
Mhm.
almost like the new camp of tennis, I
Yeah,
would say. Um, and yeah, and I think as well, I like the fact that kind of I would say there's a bit more flexibility in terms of the rules when you're inside the court as well.
yeah,
You are able to sort of come and to move a bit more freely, and you can also sort of talk to the person next to you as well. I think particularly when you're
yeah,
higher up, whereas at
yeah,
Wimbledon, you've got to sort of whisper and as that lady discovered, Nick Kyrgios at the Wimbledon final, you've
yeah. The
got to be very
700 drinks
careful.
lady. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for a number of reasons. I even like the fact that the one in New York is in a very humble part of New York, if you like, in Queens. It's opposite, I
Mm.
think, a baseball stadium where you can. I remember hanging out in. I think I think it was probably 2016. Were you with me when we were hanging out in the car park of the baseball stadium?
No, I was with you in 2016, but wasn't there.
Maybe
No.
I think it was me and because we were sort of both there in 2016, but we were sort of two separate parties. I was with
Mm.
a friend of mine, Antonio, and I think him and I. So we met each other that evening in the stadium with your father and your cousin, right?
Yeah.
But before that, I remember going to like a little shop, getting a couple of beers, knowing that or feeling that I couldn't take them into the stadium or into the grounds, and Michael confirmed that. So we went to like this car park, which is right by Flushing Meadows, but it's the car park for a baseball stadium. And someone else in the live chat will have to tell me which. By the way, somebody here complimenting you on you've been to too many great matches. Well, Don't
I
forget
know.
that 2018. Don't forget the 2018 match that I went to with Nadal and team, and don't forget as well that that 2016 Djokovic defeat at Wimbledon and so on and so forth. But seriously, yeah. So there's a baseball stadium right next to it, which is great because you can hang out in the car park there, and people are having drinks and barbecues and picnics, which they would do going to the baseball. Okay. But we went there and sort of just hung out. I don't know how we ended up there, but that was also a good place to hang out going into Flushing Meadow. But we had a good evening that evening. I remember Djokovic playing a Polish guy, but I forget who he beat that day. I think it was 4 sets. It was quite competitive.
Jerzy Janowicz, he was called.
Jerzy Janowicz. There you go, Jamie. That's your moment. There you go. Clip that. We'll put that on the internet, and that'll make Jamie look like the tennis expert amongst us. Yeah, he did win that match, and of course, we had another little highlight that evening in 2016, didn't we?
We had a highlight that evening. Did you say?
Well, can you remember somebody singing beforehand?
Ah, of course. Yeah. We had it was the opening ceremony to the retractable roof, and it was we had crikey, my mind's gone blank.
Phil Collins.
Phil Collins in the air tonight. Yeah,
Exactly.
which was great because I'm not sure. Did you know about that before? It seemed to be kept under wraps.
I mean, because I get a lot of inside information, Jamie, in tennis, and always have done. Certain people have tipped me off and stuff like that. But no, seriously, I had no clue. It was just a nice little bonus, and also something I'd forgotten about. Maybe I was snoozing at this point, but somebody also sang after their match, didn't they?
Yes, Djokovic sang, didn't he, on the court?
He sang. He did a few words from "I Can't Dance," and he said he really enjoyed having Phil Collins' presence before his match. But yeah, so both of us have been to all 4 majors, but only one of us has fallen asleep at 3 of them.
Yeah.
And that is me. I fell asleep in 2006 when I was there. As I said, at the Australian Open, it had been a long day and several wines had been consumed. Plus, the Federer Tommy Haas match that I was watching went to a 5th set, which was kind of surprising because Federer won the first 2 sets. I think it was 4th round. And so I probably just thought, I'll have a little snooze. Well, I think Federer took a snooze too, because next time I know, I wake up and it's 2 sets all. Federer managed to win 5 sets, and that year was the year that Baghdadis had an unbelievable run to the final. For those of you that remember that year, but anyway, I've also snoozed in New York 2016 with your father and I both snoozed together. I think may well have been during the women's match, but given the fact I don't remember live Djokovic singing, maybe I was already out by then. Because that was the other thing in New York as well, which is great because it's so big, you can move around a bit. We went down to the front. Yeah, we went right down to the front. Although, as I say, maybe your father and I wasted that opportunity by falling asleep. And I think there was a moment in Paris as well when I've fallen asleep too.
I mean, a moment is definitely generous. It was more than a moment.
Was it this year for the Cilic match?
For the Rude match?
Yeah, Casper Ruud Rune. Yeah.
I think you were asleep for 20, 25 minutes. So it was a nice little siesta. But of course, you'll probably just say that you were saving yourself for the.
I was just gathering my thoughts about how to tactically analyze the match, and of course, I like to do that with my eyes closed, just to get in the moment and savor my thoughts. But yeah, so anyway, you and I have touched on it that we like New York best, and I can explain why for me. I think it's also partly, as I say, because of my nationality and the fact that whether I'm living in the UK or whether I'm living as I am now in Germany, it's kind of fun. It's fun to get on a plane. It's fun to do a trip. It's fun to arrive in New York, which is obviously quite exotic. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's somewhere further away than obviously Paris and London are for both of us. And it's somewhere exciting. And yet it's also not ridiculously far. Like for me, Melbourne is just obviously a long way away. And I think New York maybe has a bit more of a vibe than maybe I'm doing Melbourne a disservice there, but there's just a lot of reasons why it's exciting. We go to, you and I have probably been to Paris a few times anyway, or I certainly have a dozen or so times. I lived in London for 3 years and it's just not as exciting. Whereas I know going to New York is for some and for some of us, of course, it's a once in a lifetime moment. And it's certainly not something you do every day of the week. And I found it exciting each year that I've been as a result. And it's been 3 years since I was there, and it might be another 3 years before I'm back. So for a variety of reasons, but I also think the crowd as well. I like the crowd. Okay, they may be not as knowledgeable as other crowds, perhaps, but I like it. I like it that on day one, when you and I were there in 2016, that the crowd is because the price of the tickets are a bit more affordable. There's not quite so much corporate as there is, particularly at Wimbledon, which I think is ridiculous because half the stadium aren't there and half the stadium don't care. I mean, even for the men's quarterfinal there this year between Nadal and Fritz, there's people there for Evian or whatever, and they just don't care about the tennis, even if it's Nadal. So they come along for half a set and then they disappear again. Then they come back when it goes to a fifth set. But New York, the people are there for the fun, and they bought their tickets for a reasonable price. I can't remember what we paid for our tickets, but I bet it was like $50 or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't much. Yeah, 50, 60.
Yeah, so that's great. And you're on Arthur Ashe Stadium, and it's got a good vibe, and people are there, and it'll be the same, especially for this year with Serena's match being played on Monday night. So that will be exciting, and it's our favorite. And I'm actually just going to share an article that John Wertheim, I think, who I interviewed yesterday. Check that out. I spoke to John Wertheim yesterday on the pod on the channel here, and make sure you search that one because it was a great interview when we spoke about Djokovic's absence that we all know about. Anyway, he's got an article here in Sports Illustrated that I'd like to talk about, which is why or how you can have the best time at the US Open and some little tips. But let's get to this one. So yeah, let's just scroll down. Make sure he says give a route for all the Ukrainian players. I'll certainly be on board for that. Be interesting to see how far some of them can go for obvious reasons. Let me just have a little scroll down here at some of the tips he's got. Yeah. Watch the top players in the boys and singles one day soon. They'll be, yeah, exactly. You can often get to see them on the outside courts as the second week sort of gets underway. And they mentioned some of the prices I think are reasonable. Particularly, I think they're talking about the Tuesday after, which I was sort of touching on, the Tuesday after what they call Labor Day, which is the Monday in New York. There's a lot of tickets flying around and they're quite affordable. So here we go. We used to advise buying the grounds pass over the seats in Arthur Ashe. Not anymore. A lousy seat in Ashe and also Armstrong is actually comparable in price and gets you roving privilege. So that's the thing. When you buy a ticket for the main court, it also gets you the opportunity just to wander around the other courts too, or certainly the smaller courts. So if those two tickets are fairly comparable, then that's it. If you want great value, go see matches on the Tuesday after Labor Day. That'll be next Tuesday, which I think is about the 6th of September, because you can often get them for reasonable prices and maybe even slightly less than face value if you go on something called StubHub. So yeah, some obvious. So definitely check this article out, and I think there's a lot of good tips here to enjoy in New York. Jamie, what are you looking forward to most about this year's tournament? I caught you off guard there, didn't I, Jamie?
You did. That wasn't on my notes.
What have you got in your notes, by the way? Tell us what you got.
I've got what we've kind of already touched on, really, about why it's the best to visit. I've also got written down a few sort of US Open memories as well.
Sure, great. Share them.
So yeah, I sort of did a few sort of favourite memories. Obviously, I had kind of Murray winning in 2012, which is coming up 10 years. That's 10 years this year.
Yeah.
Actually, it's obviously kind of very memorable.
Do you remember did you watch that? Because of course, when you're in the UK, that's another reason why New York is quite good, but not perfect. Australia, of course, is messed up. When you're in Europe, it's the middle of the night. But with New York, it starts about 5 p.m. It's not bad. Okay, the night sessions are like 1 a.m. and then but the weekend is not so bad. But do you remember watching that Murray match? Because I do.
Yeah, I do. Because the final always sort of starts at about 9 o'clock in the UK on a Sunday evening, which is not bad. Yeah, I think sort of that match ended up finishing at about 2 a.m. So it was a late finish because it was a 5-hour one. But I do remember watching it. Yeah, it was brilliant, and it was. I followed sort of Murray's career quite closely. Obviously, he'd lost in 4 finals, hadn't he? Previous to that, lost in 4 finals. Yeah, and so he'd won the first 2 sets, and then Djokovic had won sets 3 and 4, and so it really seemed like, okay, like it, here we go again. He's going to let another chance slip. But then he sort of really managed to focus in the 5th set, and that was amazing. Yeah, that's obviously a really, really good memory. First British player since Fred Perry was to win a slam. So that was great.
Yeah, that was huge, really. Having not won a major for a British player in all that time. I was in a hostel in Bilbao. I think it was 2012, as you said, 10 years ago. and I was just moving to Spain, albeit that I ended up settling in the south. I had a few months in the north, but ultimately settled in the south. And I arrived at a hostel in Bilbao, a nice, pretty nice hostel, and I was in the TV room, and fortunately it was on there, but I was the only person in the TV room. It was a Sunday night, obviously, but I had the remote to myself, which was great, and I spent 5 hours watching that. And of course, it was a surprise because Murray had a few final defeats before, especially to Djokovic in Australia, I remember. And so he's now 2-1 down. Oh, yeah, 2-1 down, right?
No, he was 2 sets up, and then it was two sets all.
Yeah. So of course that looks like the momentum is going against him, but he manages to pull it out of the bag. Any other notes from US Open memories in particular?
Yeah, I also remember an earlier memory was a final between Federer and Agassi, I think in 05.
Okay.
Which was really, really interesting. I think it might have been Agassi's penultimate US Opens. He managed to reach the final, and obviously it was kind of young versus old, wasn't it? And it was kind of a great match, really interesting story. I think Federer he definitely won. I think he won in 4 sets. And I remember still being at school then, actually, and sort of staying up late to watch the end of it.
Yeah. Quite a few memories as well for me in the last 20 odd years, or a bit more than that. Obviously, Serena's first ever major was there in 99, and it's probably almost certainly going to be her last appearance in New York. Did the news of her retirement come as any sort of surprise to you, Jamie?
Yeah, I would say I was still slightly surprised. Yeah. Because she came back and played at Wimbledon, didn't she? And then I think there were some quotes kind of in a tournament that she played just after Wimbledon, where she was sort of talking about kind of, sort of still sort of feeling sort of quite motivated, and like she kind of tennis would be something really difficult to give up. And I guess I sort of interpreted that as meaning, okay, well, she's going to continue for a bit longer. But actually, it was more kind of, I'm saying this because I'm really thinking about calling it a day. But I was surprised. But I mean, she's kind of she's been out of the sport really for sort of some time, hasn't she?
She's had an interesting relationship in New York, I would suggest. I mean, she's had an interesting relationship with fans anyway, but New York is obviously, there's been a few moments with her. We had the moment where I think she got defaulted. Was it in the final against Kim Clijsters? Well, she just lost a point. She lost a point, and that cost her the match, basically. It was a bizarre ending. Of course, that was when she threatened to I think put a tennis racket down a line judge's throat. But she also had the thing as well in New York with Osaka. That was an unusual end to the match, a bit weird and uncomfortable. Of course, Osaka breaking down in tears because the crowd booed her. By then, of course, Serena was very established and everyone was pretty much on her side. And now it's very different. Everyone knows who Osaka is, and she's certainly a fan favorite. But so a couple of unfortunate moments. Then, of course, there's also been this thing with Serena in the last 3 or 4 years, or 4 or 5 years, albeit that she's had some injury moments in the last 12 months, where she's been trying to get 23, trying to get 24 and not managing it. And that's happened in New York recently. I remember Bianca Andreescu in 2019. I remember I landed that day and managed to just catch the tail end of the match in a bar. So, but she went into that final as the favorite, as she did I remember, I think Simona Halep, I think she probably lost to in the same year in the Wimbledon final. She was in quite a few finals in recent years where she just kept losing, and you kept thinking that she was the favorite to win and didn't do so. It's been a bit unfortunate for her in New York in the last few years.
And also as well, don't forget the year that she was going for the calendar slam as well, and she lost the semi-final.
That's right. Yes, she did. Yeah, against a real surprise opponent when she lost out. I forget what year that is, but Michael here obviously corrected me slightly on the Clijsters match. That was in 2009. It was a semi-finals. It wasn't the final, but exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure she's got amazing memories. Obviously, first major there, and it may well be her last. And obviously, being from the US herself, that most of her memories will be positive, I hope. But yeah, she's had some unfortunate moments there too, for sure. And when she was going for the Canada Slam, perhaps the most. So it'll be her last year. And any other final points from memories or anything else from your notes, Jamie?
I guess that was it. Actually, I think I had that on one of the memories about Serena losing that. And also, I guess, of course, from a British perspective as well, Raducanu winning last year was pretty crazy, wasn't it? that was so big over here that so normally they so all the matches now are on Amazon Prime in the UK. And that Raducanu run was so big that they ended up putting the final on Channel 4 on
Yeah.
prime time. So that kind of gives indication, I guess, of the attention that was on that last year.
Right, and then also one or two tournaments that followed that, or maybe even the beginning of this year, even after Australia. Some of the smaller tournaments where you wouldn't get any real press contingent, British press contingent at all. Suddenly, everyone's flying off to Indian Wells and Miami and stuff from all sorts of newspapers in the UK that wouldn't normally be there because of the Raducanu thing.
Yeah.
How do you see Raducanu doing this year, by the way?
Well, I know that she's got a tricky draw, hasn't she? But
First round, yeah, definitely.
first round she has. Yeah, she's got Elise Cornet, and I think that's probably a 50-50 match, I would say.
I'd put it at 60-40 in her favor, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay. Yeah. So I've actually got her. I did the predictor earlier today, and I've actually got her getting to the fourth round.
Okay.
Which I think would be a success, actually, considering the year that she's had. I think if she wins 3 rounds, gets to the fourth round, I think that's a decent title defense. Obviously, not saying that's what she's going to do just because I've predicted it. But yeah,
I've got to get into the quarterfinals actually. So yeah,
Good.
and we're gonna have a look at your predictions now, Jamie. Actually, to sort of at the point. Just going to share the screen here so we can all make fun of your predictions. There, this is your women's quarterfinal lineup, basically. Let me just get this nicely presented. Can we see that? Okay, have you got Swiatek, Pegula? Can you see that all right, Jamie?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got Swiatek there. I guess that's no great surprise. I think Pegula as well makes sense. I think Badosa, though, getting not only to the quarterfinals but also semi-finals here is a surprise. Why are you so big on Badosa?
Yeah, I think I've kind of just gone with sort of seeding, I guess. I think. Yeah, I know that she hasn't kind of been.
Yeah, Jamie's insight there, nice little insight there. Just gone with seed, and that's why I think she'll get that far. Rybakina, of course, that makes some sense. Obviously, winning Wimbledon. I don't think I have her going that far, but yeah, I can see why you would have her.
I think I've got Rybakina beating Raducanu in the previous round, actually.
Okay, right. Okay, nice. Coco Gauff, Garcia, that makes sense. Garcia's in the form of her life. Of course, Andy Murray once said that she'd be a future world number 1.
He might be right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Kazakhstan, they're beating last year's finalist, Leylah Fernandez. I think some people might be a bit surprised that you put Fernandez that far.
Yeah, again, I think it was kind of just the way that the sort of draw went. I can't remember who I've got her beating in the previous round. I know, again, she hasn't had an amazing year, has she? And I think getting to the quarterfinal, she'd probably be quite pleased with. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Who've you got winning overall on the women's side, by the way?
I've got Swiatek winning.
Oh, Jamie, putting your neck on the line there, going for the world number 1, who is on a 35-match unbeaten run this year.
Well, she hasn't been playing well recently, though.
No, I know. But to be honest with you, I have her winning too. But my thought was just I have no clue who's going to win, so that's why I went Swiatek.
Yeah, it's so open. I think I picked Coco Gauff to win Wimbledon. I've got her getting to the final. I do think her time will come in the next year or so.
Yeah, sure. I agree. Perhaps maybe on clay might be her best surface, but obviously she ran into Swiatek this year, so that was always going to be tough. Let's switch to the men's. Let me get this one as well. I think you sent me a picture earlier on Twitter. Should be more professional on this, shouldn't I, Jamie? But yeah, let's have a look at your men's picks for the quarterfinals anyway. They should be now coming up on the screen. You got Medvedev against Felix. You got Medvedev beating Felix. So you're fairly big on Medvedev. We'll find out if you choose him as your winner ultimately. But why do you think
I've got Medvedev beating Kyrgios in the previous round as well.
Oh yeah, right. So that's the big call. Why have you gone for Medvedev over Kyrgios? Let's start with that.
I think just it feels like a safer bet. I think
that's great. The viewers here for top 10 inside tennis knowledge, such as just feels like it. I felt like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, he's defending champion, isn't he?
Very good, Jamie. You know your tennis.
Come on then, John. Tell me why you've got Medvedev to get to the final.
Well, I got Medvedev getting through. Of course, Medvedev, I think, could well play Shelton or even a guy called Wu in the third round. And I was speaking to because obviously I know my tennis. I know that Wu as a qualifier is a dark horse, if you like, but actually amongst the qualifiers, he's probably the best prepared. And I think Medvedev actually has a difficult run. I do have him get into the quarterfinals as well, but I would say that the draw was not kind for Medvedev because in the
No.
fourth round, as you say, Kyrgios. And the reason I've got him beating Kyrgios, though, is I just think pedigree. And I think that I'm still not convinced about Kyrgios. More so on a grass court, I'm convinced than a hard court, but I'm not sure. I mean, Kyrgios came out with a quote today that he can't wait for the US Open to finish. Well, it may well finish inside a week if he goes out to Medvedev.
And also,
in the
of course,
fourth.
sorry, John.
Go on, no, go on.
He beat Medvedev, didn't he, a few weeks ago? But again, I'm not convinced he's got it in him to beat a player of that caliber over 5 sets.
Absolutely, and I think that's a similar sort of conclusion that I come to. But Felix, there you got him getting to the quarters. What do you think about Felix's year as a whole?
His year as a whole has been well. It's been a strange year, isn't it? Because it feels like it's been kind of up and down. But obviously, he won his first tournament. It feels like he performed pretty well in the slams, other than Wimbledon. So I think there's definitely been signs of progress for him. And I mean, he gave Medvedev a really good game in Australia. So I think if that is the quarterfinal, then I think that could be potentially really close, actually, if Felix is playing well by the time he gets there.
The problem for me that Medvedev has is he's got quite a few 60-40s, if you like. I think him against Kyrgios is 60-40 in Medvedev's favour. I would say this is even 55-45. And that's before he gets to the semi-final or the final. So I'm a little... I can understand if people are picking Medvedev to win, and we'll find out who you've got to win in a minute. But I think his draw is not kind. You got Berrettini there in the quarterfinals, though, which yeah, and you got Fritz to beat Berrettini. Why do you favour Fritz over Berrettini?
I've got Fritz to beat Berrettini. I think Berrettini kind of hasn't had since Wimbledon really he hasn't really kind of been able to build much momentum. So I think it's maybe a bit of a stretch. I've even got him in the quarterfinal, to be honest. I can't remember who I've got Tsitsipas going out fairly early.
Oh,
in this section? Yeah, I just I know he got to the final, didn't he? Of he got to the final of Cincinnati. Yeah. So he obviously was playing quite well, but he's been quite inconsistent. I don't really trust him. I've got him going out to Cressy, actually.
Oh wow! By the way, do you know who I've got to win on the men's side? Do you know who I've chosen?
Sinner.
No, I've got Tsitsipas to win the whole thing.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned Sinner, though, because this is actually one where we were in direct comparison and we disagree, because I've got Sinner versus Alcaraz, but I've got Sinner beating Alcaraz. Why do you go for Alcaraz?
I know that Sinner's had his number, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. In the last few months, yeah.
Yeah, especially at Wimbledon as well. So I think it's just a matter of time until Alcaraz beats him, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. And you've got Rafa to beat Rublev. I guess that's a fairly clear decision. I'm surprised you got Rublev going that far, actually.
Yeah, again, I've gone for a bit of a surprise in that. I think I had Cam Norrie going out there that section.
Yeah, I mean, Rublev v Norrie could go either way, I guess. Okay, so who have you got overall to win on the men's side?
Overall, I've gone for... probably won't be too surprised. I have gone for Rafa.
Okay, yeah. So tell us why. By the way, this is a bit of breaking news for you. He did take quite a bad knock to his knee playing today. He ran into it was against Davidovich Fokina in a practice sort of set, I guess, on Arthur Ashe, I believe. And he ran into a advertising or commercial boarding, and it took a bang to the knee, albeit he continued fairly uninterrupted from there on in. But anyway, so tell me why you think Nadal is winning the US Open this year.
Well, I guess there's a few reasons. Obviously, he hasn't lost the Grand Slam match this year.
True.
He won the last time he was in New York.
He did, 2019, yeah.
And I'd be absolutely ecstatic if he was to win again.
Fair enough.
But I think that, to be honest, I've also gone for a Nadal-Medvedev final again. And I think that in terms of picking Nadal, it's probably more heart over head. If it was a Nadal-Medvedev final, I mean, I think that could easily go either way. I guess my worry would be if it was Nadal against Medvedev, if Medvedev's playing well enough to sort of get to the final. He needed a bit of a miracle to beat Medvedev in Australia, didn't he? Is that miracle? Is he going to be able to sort of repeat those heroics again?
Yeah, but I don't know if he'll necessarily go 2 sets down either.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
they
true.
played again a
That's
couple of
true.
weeks later. They played again a couple of weeks later in Acapulco, and Nadal wiped the floor with him because by
He did.
then, Nadal was probably playing even better in Acapulco than he did in Australia. Because, of course, don't forget in Melbourne, he'd only had 3 matches before in the previous pretty much 5 or 6 months. So, he was
Yeah.
really full steam ahead by the time he was in Acapulco. It was,
Okay.
the least impressive title of his year and the least impressive, perhaps, sort of moment, if you like, in many ways for Nadal. But arguably, his best tennis was in that period. And he's got Medvedev's number. I think I think he's only ever lost once to the Russian.
Yeah. So I don't feel that safe in that prediction, but I think it's such an open tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, you could easily make a case for many players on both the men's and the women's side. But as a result, you could also pull apart. Here's a nice little stat that I've just written myself in the chat. Rafa Nadal hasn't failed to reach a quarterfinal of a major he has played in since Wimbledon 2017. I think it's about 13 or 14 majors in a row where
Wow.
he's reached the quarterfinal or further every year. I mean, that Wimbledon 2017, by the way, do you know who he lost against?
Wimbledon 2017.
Someone in the live chat will tell us, but I know who it is anyway.
Was it Kyrgios or was that before then?
Gilles Muller, 15-13
Gilles
in the fifth. Nadal lost the first 2 sets. If you remember, that was when he did one of these little jumps and he banged his head on the roof as he was warming up. And I don't think he was. I think it took him about 2 sets to wake up. By which point he was obviously well down. He got it back to 2 sets all, and when that happened, you thought it was going to go on. But that was even a 4th round, so he still went, deep-ish, albeit for him, he would expect to go further.
And 2018 was the year when he started to turn around his Wimbledon form again, wasn't
Absolutely, he got to the semi-finals and was, snip and tuck against Djokovic, not taking it away from the Serb, but really could have gone either way. And then semi-finals again a year later.
And just wondering as well, John, what are your say if Nadal kind of does end up say winning the US Open, what are your thoughts on sort of obviously Djokovic not being here? I mean, were you disappointed that he wasn't able to play this time?
I mean, I think with this time with Djokovic, it's sort of less shocking. It's been more drawn out. It was just a case of whether the authorities in the US would change the rules. So I think I was fairly not uninterested, but just it wasn't like captivating like it was in Australia, where it was just drama, and it was changing from 1 minute to the next. 1 minute, he says he's got, we didn't know if he was vaccinated or not. Then he says he's got an exemption. Then he's on the plane on the way there, and while he's in the air, the Australian Prime Minister said he's not coming in. Then, of course, he ends up in the detention centre. In fact, there was a few hours at the airport. We didn't know what was going to happen. Anyway, that was the whole drama. And I don't need to go through it again. But with New York, it's been a bit more drawn out, if you like, and we kind of anticipated it. And so I don't really have any feelings on it. Honestly, I don't. It's funny because when you're a fan of one of the big three, obviously you fear that guy and you're really worried about them. And generally you would want them to go out early. I must say in Wimbledon this year, I was kind of looking forward to the prospect of a Djokovic-Nadal final. When Djokovic was 2 sets down to Sinner, I was thinking, well, I guess that boosts Rafa's chances, but I kind of want to see them in the final. Against each other and seeing if Rafa could pull level with their head-to-head, for example, which I think is important for the fans of the players. And so again, in New York, I think Nadal has a better chance of beating Djokovic than he does in Australia. I mean, there's this stat that he hasn't, lost a match on a hard court, I think, since 2013 to Djokovic. So sorry, Djokovic hasn't lost a match to Nadal on hard court, but they haven't played in New York since 2013. So that is where, Nadal might have a chance. But it's kind of just been on the card, so it's no great emotion about it in general. That there was another part to your question. Was that it?
No, it was just that, I guess, because I think that in terms of the GOAT debate and the Grand Slam race, that is going to be especially if Djokovic finishes behind. That's going to be a massive. I mean, it's going to in Australia when Nadal won it, it was kind of almost okay. Djokovic wasn't there, but the way Nadal won it was so amazing and so miraculous that it was almost, even if Djokovic was there, Nadal you could have seen a way where Nadal could have been able to pull that off with the way that it was kind of almost written. But I guess now, he's missed 2 out of the 4 slams. It is going to be an asterisk, isn't it, that Djokovic is missing all of these tournaments?
Yeah, but then on the other side, could you not say the same that when Nadal at Wimbledon this year is an asterisk? I mean, if you're going to use the expression asterisk, US Open last year as well, French Open 2016 was it when Nadal pulled out injured? So, I listen. Do I think that Djokovic's win at the French Open in 2021, for example, when I know in the 4th set Rafa was starting to struggle, but by then I think Djokovic had certainly deserved to win that match just for the Herculean effort to win that 3rd set in particular in the tiebreak and how dramatic that was. Do I think that Djokovic winning the French Open in 2016, despite the fact that Rafa pulled out, do I think that Djokovic winning the tournaments he's won when Nadal has been absent, like Wimbledon 2021 and obviously Wimbledon 2022 in the end? Absolutely not. Those are you've got to win 7 matches. Sometimes you're 2 sets down. Sometimes you're beating the form player in the final. Whatever. I see all these stats on social media and I find them quite tiresome, and they come from all sides of them, whether you're a Federer fan or Djokovic fan. The only stat that really matters, that we can objectively say, is who's won the most slams. Right now, it's Rafa Nadal. It may well end up being Djokovic. If Djokovic has voluntarily taken himself out of 2 majors this year and who knows how many more, so be it. If Nadal was injured for a certain amount of slams, and I mean, I know that, for example, Djokovic, I think, has competed at 6 or 7 more majors in his career than Nadal because Nadal has often been injured. So be it. That's just how it is. Djokovic's vaccine stance, Rafa Nadal's injuries, part of the sport. It's how it is. I didn't think about when Nadal was serving that out or winning that match against Medvedev in the final. I did not think or care. And that's the beauty of it. When you're a fan of Djokovic, when some people, you shouldn't care. If Nadal fans are coming at you on social media, if you're a Djokovic fan and they're coming at you over the fact that, Nadal was absent or Nadal was injured or whatever. If you're a Djokovic fan, you probably don't care. You really don't. You've just won Wimbledon. You've just won the French Open, and the other way around. I didn't care when Djokovic fans are saying that he was absent in Australia.
Yeah. He's missed a lot of Grand Slams of injuries, isn't he, Nadal?
Yeah. Any final comments on New York?
No, just looking forward to it starting.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait. Jamie, listen, it's been great. Thanks for all of you as well who've stopped by and for your comments in the live chat. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. There'll be plenty more. We're going to do tomorrow, Jamie, I'm going to do a style of a kind of like, if you know, Sky Sports kind of thing where we've got 4 or 5 people watching different matches, and we'll dip in and out of each match from the early stages of tomorrow. We'll be going live 5 p.m. German time, 4 p.m. UK time, and we'll be covering the first 4 or 5 hours of the tournament. We can't go beyond that, unfortunately, for various reasons and commitments that I have. But we'll basically take you through the first match. I think we're going to do Garcia's match, for example. I know we're going to cover Andy Murray's match against Sarondolo. Do you have an idea on that, how that Murray match is going to turn out?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Tough one to call. That's probably a 55-45 to Sarondolo, maybe.
I think maybe even 50-50. I think I've gone for Murray in my bracket, but that may well have been heart more than head. But after that, it gets maybe slightly easier for Murray, so maybe he can have a run.
Yeah, I've got him in round 3.
Yeah.
Even though I just said he's 55-45 to Sarondolo.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But these things are fluid, and I get what you mean. Listen, I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. And thanks for stopping by, Jamie, and everyone else who viewed. Good evening, everyone. Take care. Rest up well, because we've got 2 weeks of slightly disrupted sleeping patterns and hopefully lots of exciting tennis. Take care, Jamie, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.